Recording is in progress.
Hi there. I'm here with Sam Reynolds today, and it's October 28th, 2022. And I'm asking Sam some questions about what he'll be covering at a talk he's giving for the Astrological Society of Kentucky on November 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, Eastern Standard Time. So, Sam, how have you been? It's good to see you again.
I've been doing well. It's good to see you, Scott.
I'm going to just dive right in. How old were you when you realized that astrology was it, your calling, the thing you were going to do for the rest of your life?
Well, I'm not still convinced it's going to be for the rest of my life, but I think so. I suspect it will be. I would say I was 34 going on 35.
And how did that happen exactly in a few words?
Well, in a few words, I would just say that I decided I loved astrology. I couldn't stop doing it. And then I decided to open up a business to hang my shingle out. I got a Fifth Avenue office in New York.
Near Michael Ludin?
No, far up the street. It was more near the Flatiron District. In fact, it was a few blocks away from the Flatiron building. And so I set up shop there in a psychologist's office, a therapist's office I shared.
Fantastic. And you were by appointment only, of course, no walk-ins.
No walk-ins.
All right. Yeah. Please provide me with the salient facts about your educational achievements, major, college, whatever you want to share.
So I went to Syracuse University undergrad, where I got a degree in African American Studies and Public Relations with, you could say, a minor in religion. I graduated cum laude, missed magna just by a point. And I was active in politics there. And then I went to Temple University, where I got my master's in African American Studies.
Wonderful.
And I definitely graduated summa, but I don't think anyone counts graduate school as whether you graduated summa, magna, or cum laude.
They're just glad you were able to pay for it. So
it's thank you laude. It's thank you laude.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: did you ever hear of Shirley Jackson, the writer Shirley Jackson? I believe she went to Syracuse University.
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you about her sometime. That would be an interesting chart for you to look at.
Okay.
And you're not planning to get any more degrees? That's it? No PhD? No.
All
right. Is there a book by Sam Reynolds in the future?
Yes.
Tell me, what type of book do you think it will be? What will it be about? We're talking astrology.
Partly, I think I'll be using astrology as a way to talk about basically some measure of achievement. It's a focus on not just personal development, but basically how to excel in the world. So it won't be electional. It's going to be a cross between Marsilio Ficino's books on the 3 books of life, especially his last book on, in terms of living with the spheres, and Robert Greene's books, in terms of the 48 laws of power.
My God, I'm not familiar with his work. I'll have to make a little note.
Robert Greene has written quite a bit on basically using some measure of psychology mixed with science to deal with aspects of achievement and history. I would be remiss if I didn't mention history. Lessons from history on, basic ways of understanding human nature.
Well, I'm going to encourage you to hurry up and write that book so I can read it. I may still be in need of it. I always like to ask people if they have any specific hopes for the future of astrology on a mundane level. I mean, I feel in some ways we're at a turning point and where a crossroads of where astrology is going to go in our culture, particularly with the idea that the millennials all have a lot of astrology loving aspects in their nativities. I really do believe that astrology will be going more mainstream within the next decade. What do you think?
I think astrology, as it goes more mainstream, there will be also a backlash against astrology. And I think there will be some challenges to it. So I think astrologers will need a more thorough education. And I think that comes from ideally classes, study, and books. And my hope would be people read more and watch videos less.
I'm with you. What will attendees of your lecture on Friday, November 11th, learn about the nodal axis?
They'll get a rounder idea of how to work with the nodes and interpretation. So I'll be looking at what I call the circuits of the nodes, rather than this kind of dichotomy that we construct, this polarization of north node, south node, north node good, south node bad. It's looking at them more as a dynamic. So I'll be emphasizing the circuit between the axes, and then how those circuits relate to something called the bendings, and what north bending might mean and south bending might mean. I wish I, had more time, but I believe in the 75 minutes with time for Q&A, we can cover both an understanding of the nodes in terms of a circuit, and then give people a little splash of understanding the bendings.
Cool. How can they prepare for your talk? I'm thinking that they might want to have a look at their charts to see what planets are square the north and south lunar nodes.
Yeah, well, they may not be clear on what constitutes a square. Well, they'll know
That's an
it's not.
intriguing remark.
Well, they may not. So there may be a wider orb I give, or an orb, or they may give too wide of an orb. So if their axis is 22 degrees Aries Libra, for example, north south node, then they'll be looking at the square of a planet that, say, their Mars is at 22 degrees. What may be harder for them to figure out is that a north bending or south bending. Or if their Mars is at 29 degrees cardinal, is that also within orb, which I think it is. But if their Mars is at 11 degrees cardinal and the nodes are 22, that might be wider. So they may not know. Well, now they know, but it's kind of more, figuring that out. And I'm going to break down an easier way to figure out the north and south bending, because when I was learning,
Wonderful.
it seemed like really complicated.
I know what you mean. I learned about it from Lee Lehman's book, Classical Astrology for Modern Living, I believe. That was the first exposure to
And
it.
I love Lee, but she gives a very complicated way of describing it. And I think there's a much easier way to do
Okay,
it.
I can't wait. Will it make any difference if they use the mean node or the true node in their charts? Because I know sometimes there can be a degree or two of difference between the two
I don't think
positions.
so. I mean, you said it exactly. There's a degree difference. I don't think it's a big deal. I think if you use mean node, wonderful. I use true node.
Me too.
Either way, it's fine.
Okay. What's your take in a very few sentences on the state of the world between now and the vernal equinox of 2023?
Between now and then,
Yeah. Any
uh,
sweeping generalizations you'd like to make?
yeah, sure. I think we're going to be dealing with a lot more economic hardship around the world.
All countries?
Most of them.
Yeah.
um, I think the Western countries, the European countries for sure.
And
Um, I think America might be, the United States, I should say, be a little more insulated by some measure of its natural resources, but I think other parts of the world are going to have some hardships.
are you basing this on any particular astrological configuration or aspect?
Somewhat, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about, what has been brewing. I think Saturn and Pisces will bring its own challenges, which comes later, but still. And I think I think as Pluto is preparing for his move into Aquarius, it's going to come with some challenges as well.
Okay. Are there any speculative statements about the US midterm elections that are happening under a lunar eclipse at 16 Taurus Scorpio on November 8th? Mercury and Venus, of course, will be strongly configured with this Scorpio Taurus lunation.
Yeah, I don't think two things. I don't think we're going to have conclusive answers on November 8th related to multiple elections. And I think the waves are going to be a wash. I think people are going to be expecting, oh, the blue wave, oh, the red wave. And I think it's going to be like a wash in either way.
What do you mean by that, a wash? I'm not sure.
I don't think it's going to be decisively this blue wave. I don't think it's going to be decisively this red wave. I think it may be where, um, for instance, we might be able to keep some governorships that are Democratic, but lose some. I think we're going to have some losses in the House for the Democrats, and then we're going to have some gains in the Senate for the Republicans, which means that the balance is tipped.
Do you work with out of bounds planets at all?
Yes.
So it's going to be an out of bounds Mars in that eclipse. Does that tell you anything? Do you think there's going to be more of an uproar?
It could be, but I guess I'm thinking about, one of the interesting things was thinking about this unique Sun Venus Cazimi. And one of the things that may have happened from a similar one, I mean, even though the last one was 100 years ago in terms of a star point, but a similar one was that it also brought in a change in Congress. So right now we have a more left-centered Congress. A change would mean more right-centered. I don't think it's going to go as clear as like, oh, you lose both houses, but there may be more of a wash.
This is going to be
Meaning that,
very interesting to see what happens.
yeah, I don't think this expectation that the Dems have, like, oh, we're gonna keep everything and go even farther. I don't think that's what's gonna happen.
Now, speaking of waves, there is a fresh wave of new astrological talent, both here and in Europe. And I don't even recognize half the names of people who are speaking at conferences lately. Among the new astrologers, is there anybody's work that has particularly impressed you?
Cameron Allen, um, in terms of his medical astrology and tying in with herbalism, I don't know if he really classifies as a new emerging astrologer, but Wade Caves.
Wade is doing great work right now, and he's getting
Wade
his
has been
name
around
known.
for a while,
Right.
so
He's
Michael Bryan,
right.
in
I know
his
Michael. Yep.
surfacing new information and knowledge.
Anyone else? Maybe someone you're
Uh,
working with?
I don't know about working with per se, but yeah. Well, I am working with Lindsay Turner.
Okay.
They're bad pastor on at least on Twitter, bad_pastor. Not former pastor, but still a minister.
They are a former pastor. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then who also is doing work as an astrologer. And then someone else is Amaya Rourke, who does a lot of star work or works related to fixed stars.
Who is that?
Amaya, Amaya, Amaya Rourke, and she's based in Ireland, but she's American, but she's living in Ireland right now. I think she's doing original work. Catherine Urban,
Okay.
in terms of, I enjoy Catherine Urban's work. And then, yeah, I think it's Patrick Watson is still out there doing great work.
Yep.
He started a course with Chris Brennan in terms of rectification.
I just got the new version of the anthology that
Yeah,
Chris put out with the help of Jen's art, and it's wonderful.
yep.
Yeah.
Then there is Taylor Schuler, who is with OPA, and also doing great work, and getting out there. Taylor is a woman of color.
Okay.
And then, of course, there is Stormy Grace. Um,
Yes.
so, in terms of bringing people together, I would be remiss if I also didn't mention my friend who I have worked with. In fact, I owe her a move ago, is Ace, also known as Alice Sparkly Cat.
Okay. What a cool name.
It is.
Now, you mentioned, was it Lindsay had been a pastor?
Yes, Lindsay Turner.
I believe you started out in ministry, didn't you? And
I did.
tell me a little bit about that. I mean, were you a minister or were you on your way to becoming a
No,
minister?
I was a minister. I wasn't ordained. I was licensed. I was licensed as a minister, a Baptist minister from the age of 12, and I was formally in the ministry until 19.
Wow. In what ways, if any, have you experienced astrology as an expansion or continuation extension of your former ministry?
It's still the contemplation of spiritual life, and instead of using a Bible, I'm using nature's Bible, which is astrology.
Fantastic. How can no, I've asked you that already. So I think we'll just end it here. We appreciate your making the time to talk to us and give people a little preview of what you'll be talking about. And for those of you who don't know what the bendings are, I promise that you'll find out on November 11th.
11/11, master number.
11/11/22.
Right. And
There you go.
I'm
Oh my
born
God.
on November 22nd. So 11/22/22, 11/11/22. So
Well, what's happening in your solar return this year? This is an interesting
I'm trying to remember.
topic. Have you looked yet?
I have. I can't. I'm drawing a blank on the rising right now.
Will you set it for Santa Fe or will you set it for your birthplace?
I always do natal.
Always do natal, and I do too now. I've sort of gone back to that, and that itself is always a topic that comes up with different passionate positions.
I know, yeah, and if people ask me, I mean, I gave a talk on this, as you know, in Florida,
That's
um,
right.
and where I land, if anyone cares, is that
I care, Sam.
I
I care.
natal, and then I have found sensible results with the residency where you are residing. And then the weakest set of results I have found is from the traveling and the moving. When I say the moving, meaning like where you happen to be, irrespective of your natal or your residence.
That
Again,
has perhaps the weakest impact. So the people that are packing up, listening to our friend Ciro and going to places for their solar returns and
yeah.
I know people that travel for lunar returns sometimes.
Oh
Okay,
wow.
I mean I know. Well, listen,
Yeah, I think that's weakest. Yeah. But
let
anyway,
let let's continue this on Friday and have a wonderful week.
thank you.
Thank you so much.